Right, Rose,
Yes.
you're actually going to be first.
I'm going to do a couple of bits from Macbeth. So anyway, the first bit is, I mean, you all basically know about Macbeth, don't you? So it's right at the beginning of the play when Macbeth has met the witches on the heath. They've given him 3 ways of hailing him. They've hailed him as Thane of Glamis, which he was, Thane of Cawdor, which he's just been appointed to, and then they hail him as King that shalt be. And he is written to his wife, and this bit starts just as she's finished reading his letter, telling her about what's been going on. Right, I'm going to blank out now. Glamis thou art, and Cawdor, and shalt be what thou art promised. Yet I do fear thy nature. It is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way. Thou wouldst be great, art not without ambition, but without the illness should attend it. What thou wouldst highly, thou wouldst holily, would not play false, and yet wouldst wrongly win. Thou'dst have great Glamis, that which cries, thus thou must do if thou have it, and that which rather thou dost fear to do than wishes to be undone. Hie thee hither, that I may pour my spirits in thine ear, and chastise with the honour of my tongue all that impedes thee from the golden round, which fate and metaphysical aid doth seem to have thee crowned withal. And the next bit is after she's persuaded Macbeth to murder the king and hence become king himself. And he's just having some second thoughts. So we start with Macbeth. We will proceed no further in this business. He hath honoured me of late, and I have bought golden opinions from all sorts of people, which would be worn now in their newest gloss, not cast aside so soon. Was the hope drunk wherein you dressed yourself? Hath it slept since, and wakes it now to look so green and pale at what it did so freely? From this time such I account thy love. Art thou afeard to be the same in thine own act and valour as thou art in desire? Wouldst thou have that which thou esteemest the ornament of life, and live a coward in thine own esteem, letting I dare not wait upon I would, like the poor cat in the adage? Prithee, peace. I dare do all that may become a man. Who dares do more is none. What beast was it then that made you break this enterprise to me? When you durst do it, then you were a man, and to be more than what you were, you would be so much more than man. Nor time nor place did then adhere, and yet you would make both. They've made themselves, and that their fitness now does unmake you. I have given suck, and I know how tender 'tis to love the babe that milks me. I would, while it was smiling in my face, have plucked my nipple from his boneless gums and dashed the brains out, had I so sworn as you have done to this. If we should fail, we fail. But screw your courage to the sticking place, and we'll not fail. And that's the end.
Good, Rose.
Well done.
Well done, Rose. Well done.
Like the change of voice.
Yeah, now we go to Elaine.
Okay, this is a poem I got from the Lambda Verse and Prose anthology. Actually, it's not the present one, it's the old one. And it's a poem by Mick Gower, and it's recommended for grade 3. So if I read it all right, I can take my Lambda grade 3. And it's called Christmas Thank Yous. Dear Auntie, oh, what a nice jumper. I've always adored powder blue. I fancy you thinking of orange and pink for the stripes. How clever of you. Dear Uncle, the soap is terrific, so useful, and such a kind thought. And how did you guess that I just used the last of the soap that last Christmas bought? Dear Gran, many thanks for the hankies. Now I really can't wait for the flu. And the daisies embroidered in red round the M for Michael. How thoughtful of you. Dear cousin, what socks, and the same sort you wear. So you must be the last word in style. And I'm certain you're right that the luminous green will make me stand out a mile. Dear sister, I quite understand your concern. It's a risk sending jam in the post, but I think I've pulled out all the big bits of glass so it won't taste too sharp spread on toast. Dear Grandad, don't fret, I'm delighted, so don't think your gift will offend. I'm not at all hurt that you gave up this year and just sent me a fiver to spend. The end.
Well done, well done.
Very good.
Right, Chris, it's your turn.
It's me,
It's you.
your old Father William by Lewis Carroll. That's what I'm doing. I'm one of the favourites this week. You are old, Father William, the young man said, and your hair has become very white, and yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age this is right? In my youth, Father William replied to his son, I feared it would injure the brain, but now that I'm perfectly sure that I have none, will I do it again and again? You are old, said the youth, as I mentioned before, and have grown most uncommonly fat. Yet you turn a back somersault in at the door. Pray, what is the reason for that? In my youth, said the sage, as he shook his grey locks, I kept all my limbs very supple. By the use of this ointment, 1 shilling a box, allow me to sell you a couple. You are old, said the youth, and your jaws are too weak for anything tougher than suet. Yet you finished the goose with the bones and the beak. Pray tell me, how did you manage to do it? In my youth, said his father, I took to the law and argued each case with my wife, and the muscular strength which it gave to my jaw has lasted the rest of my life. You are old, said the youth. One would hardly suppose that your eye was as steady as ever. Yet you balanced an eel on the end of your nose. What made you so awfully clever? I have answered 3 questions, and that is enough, said his father. Don't give yourself airs. You think I can listen all day to such stuff? Be off, or I'll kick you downstairs.
That's okay.
Well done, Chris.
I like that.
Very nice.
Right, now we go on to Doreen.
It's a book by Roddy Doyle, The Woman Who Walked Into Doors. Basically, she was abused by her husband, and that was her excuse. She walked into doors. First page. I was told by a guard who came to the door. He wasn't one I'd seen before, one of the usual ones. He was only a young fella, skinny and with raw spots all over his neck. Mrs. Spencer? He couldn't have been more than 20. He looked miserable. Mrs. Spencer. I knew before he spoke. It clicked inside me when I opened the door. For years, opening the door scared the life out of me. I hated it. It terrified me. We had this screeching bell like an alarm that shook the walls when anyone rang it. It lifted me off the floor. The kids started bawling. It was dreadful. You were caught, snared, caught in the act. You looked around to hide whatever you'd been caught with. Things that Carlo had left in the hall. Things he'd robbed and left there. He changed the bell after I chewed his ear and nearly wet myself for 5 or 6 times a day. Nicola, my oldest, wouldn't come round the back to get into the house. She wanted to come through the front door. It was more grown up. She rang the bell 10 times a minute. Forgot my jacket, forgot my money. Don't like these jeans on me. I hit her. She was 13 or 12, much too old to be smacked. The 100th time she rang the bell. Sunday morning, I hit her the way a woman should hit another woman, smack in the face. I was a bit drunk, I have to admit. I regretted it. Tried to stop my hand after it had smashed her chink and come back. She held her hand up to her cheek. It was red where I'd got it. She was stunned. She hadn't noticed me getting more annoyed. I couldn't cope. It was only a stupid bell. She said she hated me, slammed the door and ran off. I let her away with it. The new bell was a nice bing bong, but one that made no difference. I still died a bit whenever it rang. The guards looking for Charlo, teachers looking for John Paul, men looking for money. It's hard to hide in a house full of kids, to pretend there's no one there. Bing bong. Only bad news came through that door. My sister, my daddy, John Paul, Charlo, bing bong. It clicked inside me when I opened the door and saw the guard. It was his face that told me before I was ready to know it. He wasn't looking for Charlo. It wasn't the usual. He was scared and there was something he had to tell me. I felt sorry for the poor young fella, sent in to do the dirty work. The other wasters were out in the car, too lazy and cute to come in and tell me themselves. I asked him in for a cup of tea. He sat in the kitchen with his hat on still. He told me all about his family. I knew nothing for a while, where I was, how come I was on the floor. Then I saw Charlo's feet, then his legs, making a triangle with the floor. He seemed way up over me, miles up. I had to bend back to see him. Then he came down to meet me. His face, his eyes went all over my face, looking, searching, looking for marks, looking for blood. He was worried. He turned my head and looked. His face was full of worry and love. He skipped my eyes. You fell, he said. That's it.
Well, okay.
Very good.
Well done, Doreen.
You got
Mark.
I'm going to turn my camera off, but I'm going to read the Edward VIII abdication speech, which was broadcast on the 11th of December 1936. At long last, I am able to say a few words of my own. I have never wanted to withhold anything, but until now it has not been constitutionally possible for me to speak. A few hours ago, I discharged my last duty as King and Emperor, and now that I have been succeeded by my brother, the Duke of York, my first words must be to declare my allegiance to him. This I do with all my heart. You all know the reasons which have impelled me to renounce the throne, but I want you to understand that in making up my mind, I did not forget the country or the empire which, as Prince of Wales and lately as King, I have for 25 years tried to serve. But you must believe me when I tell you that I have found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility and to discharge my duties as King as I would wish to do without the help and support of the woman I love. And I want you to know that the decision I have made has been mine and mine alone. This was a thing I had to judge entirely for myself. The other person most nearly concerned has tried up to the last to persuade me to take a different course. I have made this the most serious decision of my life, only upon the single thought of what would, in the end, be best for all. This decision has been made less difficult to me by the sure knowledge that my brother, with his long training in the public affairs of this country, with his fine qualities, will be able to take my place forthwith without interruption or injury to the life and progress of the empire. And he has only one matchless blessing enjoyed by so many of you, not bestowed onto me, a happy home with his wife and children. During these hard times, I have been comforted by Her Majesty, my mother, and by my family. The ministers of the Crown, and in particular Mr. Baldwin, the Prime Minister, have always treated me with full consideration. There has never been any constitutional difference between me and them, and between me and them in Parliament, bred in the constitutional tradition by my father, I should never have allowed any such issue to arise. Ever since I was Prince of Wales, and later on when I occupied the throne, I have been treated with the greatest kindness by all classes of the people wherever I have lived or journeyed throughout the empire. For that, I am very grateful. I now quit altogether public affairs and lay down my burden. It may be some time before I return to my native land, but I shall always follow the fortunes of the British Radiant Empire with profound interest, and if at any time in the future I can be found of service to His Majesty in a private station, I shall not fail. And now, we all have a new king. I wish him and you, his people, happiness and prosperity with all my heart. God bless you all. God save the king. There you go.
God save the king.
Good.
Very quiet. It's Christine's.
I'm reading something from The Importance of Being Earnest. I'm reading Lady Bracknell, who's just found out that Jack was found in a handbag. So it's only a short thing, so you haven't got to, sit there for too long being quiet. I confess that I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it has handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that reminds me of one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know how that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, has probably indeed been used for that purpose before now, but it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognised position in good society. I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce at any rate one parent of either sex before the season is quite over. You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Yeah, lovely.
Well done, Christine.
Well
That's
done,
good.
Christine.
Good. Okay, now we go to Colin.
Okay, this was my favourite childhood book anyway. Gerald Durrell's My Family and Other Animals. I've taken the first chapter, which is when they decide to leave England, and I paraphrased it. So I think you can see, maybe not, about 1/3 of the lines. So basically, I've taken out all the less interesting lines. A sharp, stinging drizzle fell, billowing into opaque grey sheets when the wind caught it. It was the sort of weather calculated to try anyone's endurance. Considered as a group, my family was not a very prepossessing sight that afternoon, for the weather had brought with it the usual selection of ills to which we were prone. Only my eldest brother Larry was untouched, but it was sufficient that he was irritated by our failings. It was Larry, of course, who started it. The rest of us felt too apathetic to think of anything except our own ills. But Larry was designed by Providence to go through life like a small blonde firework, exploding ideas into other people's minds and then curling up with cat-like unctuousness and refusing to take any blame for the consequences. He had become increasingly irritable as the afternoon wore on. At length, glancing moodily around the room, he decided to attack Mother as being the obvious cause of the trouble. "Why do we stand this bloody climate?" he asked suddenly, making a gesture towards the rain-distorted window. "Look at it. And if it comes to that, look at us. And look at you. You're looking more decrepit and haggard than every day." Mother peered over the top of a large volume entitled Easy Recipes from Rajputana. "Indeed I am not," she said indignantly. "You are," Larry insisted. "What we need is sunshine," Larry continued. Don't you agree, Les? Leslie unravelled a large quantity of cotton wool from one ear. What do you say? He's asked. Really, it's about time something was done. I can't be expected to produce prose in an atmosphere of gloom and eucalyptus. Yes, dear, said Mother vaguely. What we all need, said Larry, getting into his stride again, is sunshine, a country where we can grow. Yes, dear, that would be nice, agreed Mother, not really listening. I had a letter from George this morning. He says Corfu's wonderful. Why don't we all pack up and go to Greece? Very well, dear, if you like, said Mother unguardedly. When? Asked Larry, rather surprised at this cooperation. Mother, perceiving that she had made a tactical error, cautiously lowered easy recipes from Radputana. You do exaggerate, Larry, said Mother plaintively. Anyway, I can't just go like that. I have to arrange something about this house. Arrange? Arrange what, for heaven's sake? Sell it. I can't do that, dear, said Mother, shocked. Why not? But I've only just bought it. Sell it while it's still untarnished, then. Don't be ridiculous, dear, said Mother firmly. That's quite out of the question. It would be madness. So we sold the house and fled from the gloom of the English summer like a flock of migrating swallows. The sea lifted smooth blue muscles of waves as it stirred in the dawn light, and the foam of our wake spread gently behind us like a white peacock's tail glinting with pebbles. The sky was pale and stained with yellow on the eastern horizon. Ahead lay a chocolate-brown smudge of land huddled in mist, with a frill of foam at its base. This was Corfu, and we strained our eyes to make out the exact shapes of the mountains. Then suddenly the sun lifted over the horizon, and the sky turned the smooth, enamelled blue of a jay's eye. The endless, meticulous curves of the sea flamed for an instant and then changed to a deep royal purple flecked with green. The mist lifted in quick, lithe ribbons, and before us lay the island, the mountains as though sleeping beneath a crumpled blanket of brown, the folds stained with the green of olive groves. Along the shore, curved beaches as white as tusks among tottering cities of brilliant gold, red and white rocks. Rounding the cape, we left the mountains, and the island sloped gently down, blurred with the silver and green iridescence of olives. The shallow sea in the bays was butterfly blue, and even above the sound of the ship's engines, we could hear, faintly ringing from the shore like a chorus of tiny voices, the shrill, triumphant cries of the cicadas.
Well done, Colin. Lovely read.
Lovely, very good.
Yeah, that's nice.
Lovely. That was lovely.
Yeah, well done, Colin.
Right. Emma, it's your go.
Okay, I've made the decision to read the first couple of pages from Little Women.
Yep.
Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents, grumbled Joe, lying on the rug. Oh, it's so dreadful to be poor, sighed Meg, looking down at her old dress. I don't think it's fair for some girls to have lots of pretty things and other girls nothing at all, added little Amy with an injured sniff. We've got father and mother and each other anyhow, said Beth contentedly from her corner. The four young faces on which the firelight shone brightened at the cheerful words, but darkened again as Joe said sadly, We haven't got father, and shall not have him for a long time. She didn't say perhaps never, but each silently added it, thinking of father far away where the fighting was. Nobody spoke for a minute. Then Meg said in an altered tone, You know the reason Mother proposed not having any presents this Christmas was because it's going to be a hard winter for everyone, and she thinks we little women ought not to spend money for pleasure when our men are suffering so in the army. We can't do much, but we can make our little sacrifices, and ought to do it gladly. But I'm afraid I don't. And Meg shook her head as she thought regretfully of all the pretty things she wanted. But I don't think the little we should spend would do any good. We've each got $1, and the army wouldn't be much help by our giving that. I agree not to expect anything from Mother or you, but I do want to buy Undine and Sintram for myself. I've wanted it for so long, said Joe, who was a bookworm. I plan to spend mine on new music, said Beth with a little sigh, which no one heard but the hearth brush and the kettle holder. I shall get a nice box of Faber's drawing pencils. I really need them, said Amy decidedly. Mother didn't say anything about our money, and she won't wish us to give up everything. Let's each buy what we want and have a little fun. I'm sure we can grub hard enough to earn it, cried Jo, examining the heels of her boots in a gentlemanly manner. I know I do, teaching those dreadful children nearly all day when I'm longing to enjoy myself at home, began Meg, in the complaining tone again. Oh, you don't have half such a hard time as I do, said Jo. How would you like to be shut up for hours with a nervous, fussy old lady who keeps you trotting, is never satisfied, and worries you till you're ready to fly out of the window or box her ears? It's naughty to fret, but I do think washing dishes and help keeping things tidy is the worst work in the world. It makes me cross, and it gets my hands so stiff, and I can't practice good a bit. And Beth looked at her rough hands with a sigh that anyone could hear at that time. I don't believe any of you suffer as I do, cried Amy, for you don't have to go to school with impertinent girls who plague you if you don't know your lessons, and laugh at your dresses, and label your father if he isn't rich, and insult you when your nose isn't nice. If you mean libel, I'd say so, and let's not talk about labels as if Pa was a pickle bottle, advised Jo, laughing. Oh, I know what you mean, and you needn't be satirical about it. It's proper to use good words and improve your vocabulary, returned Amy with dignity. Oh, don't peck at another, children. Don't you wish we had the money Papa lost when we were little, Jo? Dear me, how happy and good we'd be if we had no worries, said Meg, who could remember better times. You said the other day you thought we were a deal happier than the King children, for they were fighting and fretting all the time in spite of their money. So I did, Beth. Well, I guess we are, for though we do have to work, we make fun for ourselves, and they're a pretty jolly set, as Jo would say. Jo does use such slang words, observed Amy, with a reproving look at the long figure stretched on the rug. Jo immediately sat up, put her hands in her apron pockets, and began to whistle. Oh, don't, Jo, it's so boyish. That's why I do it. I detest rude, unladylike girls. And I hate affected, niminy-piminy chits. Oh, birds in their little nests agree, sang Beth the peacemaker, with such a funny face that both sharp voices softened to a laugh, and the pecking ended for that time.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well done. Your camera's frozen.
Well done,
Emma.
Emma. Whenever you're ready, Lee, it's your turn.
Is that all right? This is a poem about two brothers called Yez and Orr by Ronald Doe. My brother was always my best friend. We would play sports and we'd just pretend. I'd hit a homer and hit a goal, he'd score. You see, I was Yez and he was Orr. As we grew up in the project courts, nothing mattered except for sports. We never once thought about a girl as we lived in our fantasy world. For in the courtyard in which we'd play, the next Bobby Orr would proudly say, Ronnie, someday when I'm all grown up, I'll help the Bees win the Stanley Cup, score the winning goal in the last game, and all of Boston will chant my name. But till that day comes, I guess once more, You can be Yes, and I will be Or. Butchie and I played hockey for fun, and we weren't out to hurt anyone. But then came drugs, fast money, and girls, and playing sport wasn't in this world. Because as the years went flying by, Butchie's goal was to be a wise guy. With the new meaning of the word score, there'd be no more Yaz and no more Or. I saw Butchie on the project court, where we had played every single sport. His eyes were bugged and his vision blurred, and when we spoke, his speech was slurred. His face was pale, his expression blank. He told me he was robbing a bank. I said, Butchie, what about poor Ma? Her heart can't take another scar. But the madness in my brother's eyes brought out the sadness in my cries. For there was hatred not seen before, back when I was Yaz and he was Or. And on the day he was sent to jail, I had a vision that seemed so real. I pictured him on a breakaway. I saw him wink, and I heard him say, Ronnie, someday when I'm all grown up, I'll help the Bees win the Stanley Cup, score the winning goal in the last game, and all of Boston will chant my name. As fate would have it, it was his name. That truly was Butchie's claim to fame. But in my heart, I just wish once more I could be Yes, and he could be Or.
Nice.
Lovely, lovely.
That was interesting.
We've got Jennifer.
All right, so carrying on from last week during the quiz, the theme, Peace at Last was mentioned by Jill Murphy. So I thought,
I love this book.
I thought I would give it a blast. So here we go. So it's called Peace at Last by Jill Murphy. The hour was late. Mr. Bear was tired. Mrs. Bear was tired. And Baby Bear was tired. So they all went to bed. Mrs. Bear fell asleep. Mr. Bear didn't. Mrs. Bear began to snore. Shoo! Shoo! Went Mrs. Bear. Shoo! Shoo! Oh no, said Mr. Bear. I can't stand this. So he got up and he went to sleep in Baby Bear's room. Baby Bear was not asleep either. He was lying in bed, pretending to be an aeroplane. Went Baby Bear. Oh no, said Mr. Bear. I can't stand this. So he got up and he went to sleep in the living room. Tick tock went the living room clock. Tick tock, tick tock. Cuckoo, cuckoo. Oh no, said Mr. Bear. I can't stand this. So he went off to sleep in the kitchen. Drip, drip, went the kitchen tap. Went the refrigerator. "Oh no," said Mr. Bear, "I can't stand this." So he got up and he went to sleep in the garden. Well, you would not believe what noises there are in the garden at night. "Tweet-doo, tweet-doo," went the owl. "Snuffle, snuffle, snuffle, snuffle," went the hedgehog. Sang the cats on the wall. "Oh no," said Mr. Bear, "I can't stand this." So he went off to sleep in the car. It was cold in the car and uncomfortable. But Mr. Bear, he was so tired that he didn't notice. He was just falling asleep when all the birds started to sing and the sun peeped in the window. "Tweet, tweet, 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 tweet," went the birds. "Shine, shine, shine," went the sun. "Oh no," said Mr. Bear, "I can't stand this." So he got up and he went back inside the house. In the house, Baby Bear was fast asleep, and Mrs. Bear had turned over and wasn't snoring anymore. Mr. Bear got into bed and he closed his eyes. "Peace at last," he said to himself. Went the alarm clock. Mrs. Bear sat up and she rubbed her eyes. "Good morning, dear," she said. "Did you sleep well?" "Oh, not very well," yawned Mr. Bear. "Never mind," said Mrs. Bear. "I'll bring you a nice cup of tea." And she did. The end.
Oh, that was brilliant.
Well done. I'm going to sleep now, thanks.
Well, you should go see Baby's bedtime
Lovely.
story.
Sam.
I love that story.